Did you know that JD Davis is literally hitting the baseball harder than any player in the game this year? Yet his extra base numbers are ranked nowhere near the top of the league. On the show today, I'm going to go through the puzzling case of JD Davis's expected numbers versus the numbers he's actually putting up, and also talk about whether he is the Mets' long-term fit for at least the remainder of this season at DH. We will also preview what lies ahead against the Milwaukee Brewers. The Mets got a much needed day off on Monday, but they're about to play another good team at home finally this week. So I'm going to go through what to expect in that series. A lot ahead on this edition of Locked On Mets.
You are Locked On Mets, your daily New York Mets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello to all you amazing Mets fans. You're watching Locked On Mets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Ryan Finkelstein. If you want to find any of my work, follow me on Twitter at FinkelsteinRyan. You can also find some of my writing at justbaseball.com, where I work as the managing editor. Now, going through JD Davis's season is something that I've been meaning to do for a while, because you look at all of these advanced metrics, right? You go to Baseball Savant and they have the expected batting average, expected slugging percentage, expected WOBA, hard hit percentage. He is putting up some of the best contact in this sport. You look at his numbers overall, and they're just not quite where you would expect them to be based on what the data is telling us. So I wanted to dive in to what he's done, but I also want to talk about what he's been for the Mets since 2019, because anyone who's been listening to this show knows that I have been trying to trade JD Davis on podcasts for literal years now. And the reason I've always been one of JD Davis's strongest critics is because of the glove. That is the number one main part of my argument. It's always been about the glove. Last week, or maybe a couple weeks ago at this point, I talked about the defensive metrics for JD Davis and how if you go back since 2019, he's basically been the worst defender in baseball based on defensive run saved. If you factor in the amount of runs he's given up based on that metric over the amount of innings he's played, there's really no close second even to how bad he's been defensively. That's just the statistical facts. But you also get the offense, and you can make a case that he's been a top 3 hitter on the Mets since he came over in 2019. And so if you're just focusing on the bat as a DH, there is a really strong argument to be made that JD Davis deserves to be playing every day, something that I started to bring up about a month ago at this point, I think, maybe 3 weeks ago, where the Mets were getting no production from Dom Smith after previously getting no production from Robinson Cano. And we were talking about reverse splits, how JD Davis hits righties even better than he hits lefties. Why not get him out there every day? And we've seen a lot of success with that recently. Since May 21st, JD's getting more regular playing time. And over his last 16 games played, you see his batting average is only second to Louis Guillorme, as well as his on-base percentage and his WRC+. Guillorme leading the Mets in all 3 of those categories. He's hitting 357, a 403 on base, 482 slugging, a 152 WRC+. And again, WRC+ is weighted runs created plus, measuring hitters based on a league average of 100, so 58 or 56% better than your league average hitter. Also, his BABIP, which is batting average on balls put in play, is 487. So that means that since May 21st, if he's putting the ball in play, about 1 in every 2 times, he's getting a hit out of it. If you go to the sample since 2019, right, I said that he's been arguably a top 3 hitter on the Mets. Of Mets batters with at least 500 plate appearances dating back to 2019 when the Mets acquired him, JD is second behind only Jeff McNeil in batting average with his 280 average. I think McNeil was 297. His on-base percentage is second to only Brandon Nimmo at 369. His 460 slugging percentage is second to only Pete Alonso, and his 128 WRC plus is third behind Alonso and Nimmo. You look at his 10.3 walk rate or 10.3% walk rate. That's fourth behind Nimmo, Michael Conforto, and Francisco Lindor. So if it's just coming down to the at-bats you're getting, you talk about professional at-bats, he's giving you great at-bats for, 4 seasons now. It's always been the glove for me, and now if you can remove that from the equation, maybe he is an answer here. This year, you look at his numbers as a whole, a 263 hitter, a 346 on base, 381 slugging, a 114 WRC plus. Not great, but what he's done recently points to more success with more playing time, and some of those expected metrics are starting to bear out that we've seen throughout the year. Here's the puzzling thing with JD Davis that I want to talk about a little bit more in the next segment as we try to kind of map out the Mets season at the DH spot. As I said in the intro today, he literally hits the ball harder than any player in this sport this year. His hard hit percentage is 64.6% of the time. Now, hard hit percentage is how many times you hit a baseball over 95 miles per hour. So that is, 65% of the time the ball's coming off his bat at 95. That's better than Yordan Alvarez. That's better than Aaron Judge. The difference is Aaron Judge and Yordan Alvarez and someone like Pete Alonso, as we'll talk about in the next segment, lift the ball a lot more. And so that translates to the extra base hits. Because this year you look at ISO, which is isolated power, a measure of the hitter's raw power that tells you how often a player hits for extra bases. This isn't raw power based on how hard he hits the ball, like hard hit percentage. This is game power. This is essentially taking a player's slugging percentage or taking a player's batting average and removing it from their slugging percentage. The equation to get a player's ISO is you take their doubles, you add it to their triples times 2, then you add it to their home runs times 3, divide it by their at-bats, and that's how you get their ISO. But again, it's basically just removing their batting average from their slugging percentage. So this year, JD Davis has an ISO of 119. You know where that ranks in baseball? The guy that's hitting the ball harder than anyone ranks 212th among hitters with at least 100 plate appearances. That puts him in the company of guys like Nico Horner, Jackie Bradley Jr., and Randall Grichuk. Completely different company than who he's keeping with the hard hit percentage of Yordan Alvarez and Aaron Judge. So I want to talk about in the next segment here why that's the case, and does it really matter? Is he still, regardless of the extra base hits or not, the best option to be the Mets DH for the remainder of this season? We're going to get to that in a minute, but this episode is brought to you by Rock Auto. With the ever-increasing numbers of makes and models, it's now impossible for your local chain auto parts store to stock all the parts you need. So why endure the often pointless and seemingly intimidating questioning and wait while the person behind the counter orders the parts on their computer, choosing only the one brand their warehouse happens to carry, when instead you can shop from hundreds of manufacturers at rockauto.com and save 30%, 50%, maybe even 100% more for the exact same amount of parts you would get at a chain store or new car dealership. Rock Auto is a family business that's been serving do-it-yourselfers for over 20 years. Their prices are reliable low for every customer. So go explore their easy-to-use website today to find the solution to your auto parts needs. Again, go to rockauto.com right now. See all the parts available for your car or truck, and make sure you write Locked On in there. How did you hear about us box so they know that we sent you? Amazing selection, reliable low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. rockauto.com. So one of the things I've been talking about a lot this year is how JD Davis's expected metrics are among the best in the game. His expected batting average of 313 ranks in the 94th percentile among all hitters. His expected slugging percentage of 570 ranks in the 90th percentile among all hitters. You also have his expected weighted on base average, his xWOBA, which at 401 is the 96th percentile among all hitters. Now, xWOBA is formulated using exit velocity, launch angle, and on certain types of batted balls, sprint speed. It's trying to give you a sense of what a player's value is offensively, okay? An expected weighted on base average. So it's trying to not only give you what they should get on base, but also it's supposed to factor in the value of those on base appearances, the doubles, the triples, the home runs, all of that. So his expected WOBA is extremely high at 401. It's right behind Pete Alonso at 402. Yet we see the impact of those two players, and it's not the same offensively. It's not even close. And the biggest thing you can always point to at Jay Davis is the launch angle. You look at his career, his 8.7 launch angle is nowhere close to Pete Alonso at 15.5. And this season, Alonso's at 19.2, JD's at 9.1. You look at their respective fly ball percentage and ground ball percentages. Davis at 25.6% for his fly ball percentage. Pete Alonso this year, 43%. JD Davis's ground ball percentage of 46.3%, way worse than Alonso's at 34.6%. You look at the home run to fly ball ratio. For JD, it's 9.5%. For Alonso, it's 23.4%. So JD simply does not lift. Now, one of the things we've learned this year, though, is changing a player might not be the best way to get the most out of them compared to last season where the Mets took a player like Jeff McNeil and he was trying to hit the ball harder. He was trying to hit home runs and get extra base hits. And now you've seen this year by just battling the shift. Anytime they shift, what does he say he's going to do? He's going to try to poke a ball through, and it doesn't matter how hard he hits it. He just wants to get on base and get his knocks. JD Davis might be a similar player. Now, he's always going to hit the ball hard, but maybe you just have to accept him for what he is as a line drive hitter who you hope could at least turn some of these singles into doubles if he can find some gaps. The problem with finding gaps, though, for JD is he hits the ball to center field all the time. Now, in a lot of respects, that's the sign of a good hitter, right? Hit it where it's pitched, hit the ball up the middle. That's great. But when you got a center fielder out there, when you at times have shifts in place and everything like that, they're playing him exactly where he's hitting it. And so he's hitting the ball so hard. How many times have we seen this year JD Davis hit a line drive that one hops the center fielder and he's standing on first base with a single? That's what we're seeing a lot. And you look at where he's hitting the baseball, 41.5% of the time, it's the center field. He's only pulling the ball 36.6% of the time. Let's just think about, how home runs travel and how ballparks are made up. It's a lot harder to go yard to dead central than it is to pull the baseball. Pete Alonso, who's hitting his home runs, is pulling the ball 47.5% of the time. He's only going with the middle 29.6% of the time. So if you're trying to take JD Davis's expected value with how hard he hits the ball and what that should translate into, you have to also think about the type of player he is and where that contact is really ending up. And right now, it's line drives to center fielders, which is great when they fall. It's not great when they're caught. And I think that's why early in the season, he was hitting into so much bad luck, just simply because of where he hits the baseball. Now, I don't know how to change it. Do you tell JD to change who he is as a hitter and pull the ball and lift the ball more? I don't know if he can really make those changes and be successful. I think that JD Davis might just be a guy that hits over 300 when he's at his best and only slugs, 420 or something like that because he's just not going to get those extra base hits. But considering where the Mets have been this season at DH, I don't think that that's really a problem. I mean, you look at what they got from Robinson Cano early, from Dominic Smith, even what they could potentially get from the guys that are on the roster right now, the young guys, and Nick Plummer or Khalil Lee. Do we really think any of them are giving the Mets better at bats than what they're getting from JD Davis? I think if we talk about what this team is, passing the baton, taking your walks, all these different things, JD Davis really is the best internal option outside of maybe seeing another young guy come up because you have Mark Vientos, who is tearing the cover off the ball in Syracuse. You have Francisco Alvarez tearing the cover off the ball in AA, and they have that home run pop. So maybe by the end of the season, one of them separates themselves and makes themselves a viable DH option that brings a little bit more with that home run pop than Davis. But that's still a little bit farther away, and you don't know how a rookie's going to perform. With Alvarez, there's a lot that goes into it. I don't think that that's really a realistic outcome. I know there's a lot of noise right now that he wants to be in the majors this year, and he's certainly doing an incredible job the last month and really the last couple of weeks, just hitting a ton of home runs and really making an argument for himself to at least get promoted to AAA by year's end. But I think they're going to slow play it when it comes to his development. Vientos, I still expect to see at some point this season, and I could see him grabbing the job from JD. But currently, the way he's hitting over the last couple of weeks, it makes sense to ride out the hot hand for as long as he continues to hit over 350 like he has over the last couple of weeks here, and see what you have with JD because, again, he's a functioning cog in a really good offense right now. The one other argument I might make is that I still prefer to see Guillorme in the lineup over Davis. You look at their numbers over this hot streak for JD, and Guillorme's has still been better while he gives you that plus defense. And I think that Eduardo Escobar, unlike JD, could tap into that home run pop again. He has a much greater pedigree of doing that. So, a couple weeks back, or I don't even know how long ago back at this point, I talked about the prospect of playing Louis Guillorme every day at third base and DHing Eduardo Escobar. I still think that's the best 9 the Mets can roll out right now. But because the way Buck Showalter mixes up at bats, everyone's going to get time. You're going to play 10 or 11 anyway. And so I think that JD is squarely in the mix until one of those prospects maybe establishes themselves, or if the Mets decide to go in a different direction at the trade deadline. For now, though, it's JD's job to lose. Anyway, I want to preview what lies ahead against the Milwaukee Brewers in just a minute, but whether you're ready to pop the question or if you're celebrating a milestone moment, find jewelry as unique as her with the modern convenience of online shopping at BlueNile.com. Build the engagement ring of her dreams with Blue Nile, as they have simple online tools to let you choose the diamond shape, the size, and the clarity, as well as the setting style. Blue Nile's bench jewelers will then handcraft her perfect engagement ring. Each ring is one of a kind. Celebrate life's special moments with fine jewelry, as Blue Nile has jewelry experts on hand 24/7, available via phone or chat to help you find a memorable gift at every budget. Make your moment sparkle with jewelry from BlueNile.com, and Locked On Mets listeners get $50 off purchases of $500 or more. This podcast exclusive does include engagement, and with the code Locked On, again, that's code Locked On, you can get that deal. Plus, every order is insured, ships free, and arrives in discreet packaging that won't give away what's inside. Shop stress-free and find your forever peace by going to BlueNile.com today. Looking at the Milwaukee Brewers season, they are certainly going through a rough patch. They started the year 15-7 in April. They were 32-18 through their first 50 games, but they have lost 10 of their last 12, and they had an 8-game losing streak mixed in there. So definitely not the best time to be a Brewers fan. And for the Mets perspective, a good time to face them. Their team OPS of 638 over the last 15 days is ranked 29th in baseball, and their 49 runs scored is tied for the 5th worst mark among all MLB teams. Christian Yelich has been their best qualified hitter over that span, and he has a 702 OPS. So that's not great. I think that the Mets offense is certainly better than the Brewers offense. We would have said that even at the early parts of the season where the Brewers were finding more success, and certainly that's even more of a case now. You look at the pitching matchups, and this is where the Brewers could have an edge, but you're only really seeing Corbin Burns of the Brewers' elite starters. I look at Brandon Woodruff, Freddie Peralta, Corbin Burns. That's the trio that went coming into the season that I had ranked, I think, is it the best rotation in baseball? I'm pretty sure I had them as the best rotation in baseball when I ranked them for just baseball in some of our preseason work there. You throw in the lefty that's now escaping me, Eric Lauer, who's had a really good year as well. The Mets are missing a lot of those guys. In the first game, they're going to see Adrian Hauser. It's going to be Chris Bassett versus Hauser, and Bassett in desperate need to turn his season around. Just had a really dreadful West Coast trip, has struggled against the likes of the Dodgers, the Giants, and the Padres this year, and that's inflated his stats. Off the top of my head, I'm pretty sure his ERA against those 3 teams is 10.07, and his ERA against the rest of the league was somewhere under 2.5. So hopefully that's a trend that continues. And now that he's facing a team from the NL Central, Bassett goes back to being the guy that we've seen who can flash ace potential at times. But you're looking at his season now based on those bad starts. He has a 4.35 ERA, which is worse than Hauser at 3.92. Hauser has given up 5 runs in 2 of his last 3 starts, so he's not in the best stretch of games either. You go to game 2, huge advantage Brewers. The reigning Cy Young Corbin Burns with his 2.48 ERA goes against David Peterson. Burns has not made it out of the 5th inning, though, in his last 2 starts. A couple of rough outings there. But you look at his number for the season, Hardy has 92 strikeouts. His 11.39 strikeout per 9 is the 5th best mark in all of baseball. The guy is an unbelievable pitcher. I'm looking forward to watching him as a baseball fan. But if you're talking about the Mets' chances against him, not looking forward to that necessarily. And Peterson, we'll see what he does. This could potentially be One of his last starts in the rotation, maybe gets one more turn after this, depending on when Max Scherzer starts his rehab. It does appear like Scherzer has gotten the edge on DeGrom when it comes to his return here somehow. Jacob DeGrom not yet ready to face live batters. I think Scherzer is trending a little bit closer to doing that and getting back out there. The final game, Aaron Ashby versus Tyler McGill, and that also sets up Carlos Carrasco and Taijuan Walker to open the next series. So the Mets have already showed their cards, announcing their next 5 starters of how they're lining things up. Williams back in the bullpen, likely expected, I would imagine, to maybe get some bulk innings on either the Peterson or the McGill start, depending on how they go. Tyler McGill this season has a 4.50 ERA. A lot of that due to his struggles right before he hit the IL. Meanwhile, you got Aaron Ashby, who has a 3.91 ERA and is a lefty. Now, I'm going to say this because it's been working recently. The Mets have been terrible this year against left-handed pitching, and you always are concerned when they go into a game against a left-handed starter. Now that I got that caveat out of the way, because you don't want to break the juju, I will say that recently the tides have turned a little bit. Over their last 9 times facing a left-handed starter, the Mets have won 8 of those games. They beat 2 lefties over the weekend against the Angels. And across that West Coast trip, if you think about their wins, beating Julio Urias and others, Blake Snell was another one. They've been doing a little bit better now, changing that narrative when it comes to how they can fare against left-handed pitching. So we'll see if that holds up against Ashby, if that's potentially a rubber match game. We'll see what happens there. The last time out for Ashby, he got tagged for 6 runs against the Washington Nationals. And again, he has a 3.91 ERA on the season. Right now, the Brewers are technically the second place team, half game back from the Cardinals. The Mets are obviously still a first place team. Big series for the Mets before the Marlins come into town. Be great to at least take 2 or 3 and then try to beat up on the division a little bit more over the weekend. As always, thank you for listening. Make sure you follow, rate, and review wherever you get your podcast. Make sure you follow me on Twitter at Finkelstein Ryan. Follow the show at Locked On Mets. Thank you for making Locked On Mets your first listen every day. Now for your second listen, check out Locked On MLB, hosted by Paul Francis Sullivan. Locked On MLB is where you want to go to stay up to date with everything going on in Major League Baseball. You can follow Locked On MLB wherever you get podcasts.